Good afternoon. My name is Michael Favia. This is Dane McCauley. We're with Favish, a local area Drupal web shop. Today we're going to talk about cross-platform applications built on Apache, Cordova, or Phonegap. If I could just take a quick temperature of the room to see who's in here. We have developers could raise their hands. All right. Site builders, themers. Okay, great. I guess putting advanced on there kind of gets you a lot of developers, huh? So I'll go reasonably quickly through the marketing component of this then, and we can get to the technical details. Or I won't. Oh, I'm sorry, guys, it's frozen. Okay. Drupal is a foundation. So you're here at DrupalCon, you probably have an existing Drupal content managed site. Maybe it has a bunch of articles for your newspaper, a lot of business information, business intelligence about your projects you're managing, that kind of stuff. You've built this site and it is it's working well for your desktop users, but you're quickly seeing the adoption of the mobile devices steal away the user base. The proportion of US mobile users is growing really rapidly, depending on which market vertical you're in. You can see here that sites like the New York Times and a lot of the other mobile sites are predominantly viewed from mobile devices. And Drupal really doesn't do a good job of engaging your users because they're unable to I'm sorry, guys. Okay. Basically, so Drupal's a great yes. I'm not able to do this today. I'm too tired. All right. I'm sorry, guys. I was up till 3 o'clock last night. Okay. What's that? Yeah, I know. We have developed a number of applications built on Apache Cordova and Backbone.js, leveraging things like underscore, layout manager, right? And we've developed these so that we can take your content that is coming from your existing Drupal site and repurpose it for the mobile web. What it allows you to do is create a RESTful endpoint on the end of your Drupal server and consume that data in the app. And what it does, so you have an existing Drupal site and you install the services module. And that services module goes and exposes JSON objects from the views that you create and provide as service endpoints, right? This gives you data portability so that you can push it through all the different Flash, so you can push it through all the different services you might want to consume it in. This is a two-way street, so you can actually communicate with the Drupal server itself to get data and also post data, so you can create content entities like nodes and things like that. You have a couple different options when you go to the application level of the of implementing a Drupal site. The first one is native. If you're going to build a site on native, you're going to want to you want to know that there are a couple different options here. If you're using heavy GPU consumption, then you're going to want to go with native because it's more performant. It gives you full API access to all of the different platforms' APIs, and you always have the most recent available APIs to deal with. But it's expensive. For every single platform that you want to support, you actually have to support and create a native application. And what happens is they begin to diverge, and the feature sets amongst them change over time. One app becomes more feature capable than the other, and you don't know which platform you want to bet on. It's an uncertain future for the rise of Android, 4 years ago, or for the new platforms like Windows Mobile and everything. And native requires you to duplicate all that effort and really invest in each platform independently. There's a second branch of development that's called native hybrid, and what this allows you to do is use JavaScript code that you're used to write these apps and deploy them across multiple backends. You get to use the familiar languages, right? You benefit from a lot of performance improvements because it's just-in-time compiled, right? It actually takes all of your JavaScript and compiles it into shared objects on each platform, and dynamically links them together. So you get quite a bit of performance improvement over a completely cross-platform solution, and you get to leverage the native UI. The native UI is nice for creating that experience that each mobile platform is expecting. But it's also a con because you have to deal with all the native UI components. It's a different look and feel for every single application, and it can be unwieldy. They also come with cost. There aren't really many open source solutions for this hybrid model here. You have to deal with a number of licensing problems, and you don't actually control the source when you're done. You're dependent on a third-party resource, so it's a definite concern. Cross-platform. So cross-platform solutions like Phonegap or Cordova, Apache Cordova, allow you to use familiar languages to deploy your app on phones using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. They're really, truly portable. You can actually take the apps that we build for these phones, and you can run them on just mobile web pages. You don't have to. For instance, if you have a customer who comes to your website via their web phone's browser instead of through the app that you've built for them, you can detect that and serve up the web app experience to the regular web browser, which is a nice benefit for some of our customers. You're able to deliver a truly common aesthetic across all the different platforms, it can be a benefit. But it does mean you actually have to go and do it, implement it with CSS and JavaScript. The cons, of course, are performance. The WebKit or the WebView implementations in a lot of these platforms are substandard, especially if you reach back to like Android 2.2. They're improving pretty dramatically, and a lot of them are receiving OpenGL support, but they still do suffer from anything that you want to do that's really dynamic. They also all appeal to the lowest common denominator. You have to kind of leverage only the functionality that every one of these platforms implements. That's things like compasses, GPS, contacts, but you can't use some of the more lower level functionality that you can if you do a native app. So with all these together, the one that we're going to demonstrate for you today that we tend to use is a Phonegap cross-platform solution. And how Phonegap works is it basically sits in between the web app, the HTML5 JavaScript web app that you create, and the phone infrastructure, and it provides JavaScript bindings that allow you to access all of the native implementations for the compass and all the native equipment straight through the JavaScript. So it just opens up JavaScript bindings to allow you to get where the person's located, or set new contacts, or initiate whatever you need to do. At the core of all these apps, then, is just HTML5 and JavaScript, the stuff that you're used to writing, to be honest. And you can do it with any tool set you choose. We tend to find one of the more successful routes to go is to use the underscore templating system coupled with required.js, and all of this is pulled together inside of a Backbone.js or an Ember app. So what Backbone is it is the MVC controller that allows you to provide that dynamic look that is an app without having page refreshes and that kind of stuff. It dynamically manipulates the models and the DOM on the page. So all of those libraries are pretty complicated, and installing them and maintaining them can be a bit of a bear. We've developed a number of tools across the spectrum that allow you to manage the installation and configuration and deployment of all of these tools automatically. Paul Irish is one of the primary developers behind the Yeoman workflow. And what it basically allows you to do is you use Yo to dynamically scaffold out an application that has all of your requirements in it. And it goes and grabs via the Node server all of the grunt, all of the grunt modules and everything that you need to fire up and do live reload via grunt, or maybe a dynamic SAS compilation and live reload, all that kind of stuff. And of course, Bower is the package management system that sits in between your command line environment and the GitHub repositories that you use every day. With Bower, you can think of Bower as Drush DL. It allows you to dynamically download jQuery or underscore, any of these types of things. So with this Yeoman experience, you can fully automate your build environment, and you track very little code in the actual Git repository. Everything's stored upstream, and you're really just tracking the differences between the two, between the versions that you use. So I guess this is the business argument for putting together the app the way that we've done it. And Dane's going to walk you through a little bit of what a demo app looks like and how it functions and how you might structure it.
Okay, can everybody hear me? Is this good?
Yeah.
Good back there. Hi, I'm Dane. I started working with Michael about a year ago, and we do fun stuff, and this is just more of that. So like Michael was saying, the Yeoman with Grunt and Bower makes your app really flexible and convenient for just doing everyday development stuff. Like, say you need to detect touch events for a mobile app. Like, you're going to need some library for that. And in one line, you can download that library and put it in the right place and hook it up to your app. You don't have to mess with going to GitHub, doing a clone, maybe deleting the Git if you don't want to track submodules, all that jazz. So we put together a little demo here that kind of hacked it together at the last minute. As this guy. Okay, cool. So here we are. This is our demo. We've got this available on GitHub if anybody wants to pull it down. So you'll see inside of here we have a couple of, well, more than just a couple. So Yeoman set this app up for me. And what I mean by set it up is it's provided the scaffolding to make this app so I can start writing code instead of setting up my htaccess, my Bower, RC, all this jazz. So first I'm going to start out by showing you the Bower RC. This is the way we keep track of the libraries that our app uses. No, that's not right. Thank you. Yeah, I lied. That's Bower.json. So we got here these are the dependencies for our app. We're using a SAS Bootstrap, require.js, which is a asynchronous module development loader, dependency management system. jQuery, backbone AMD. You'll notice there's version numbers here that also that go and get that particular version. And so if you get this little demo guy, the first thing you'll do is do Bower install. And that reads your Bower file and grabs all this stuff for you, puts it in a folder called Bower components. You can see all my stuff's right here. We are using require.js in this app, which is pretty cool stuff. It lets you pull in asynchronously all your libraries. So it leads to a little bit faster load time. Instead of waiting for each guy to pull in.
And no longer do you care what order they actually come in either. You don't have to juggle script orders or anything like that. They're all just defined and ready to go.
So the beautiful thing about that, and like Michael said, cat index.html, I don't have to pull in tons of JavaScript files. I can just do it with one line. And the way that this is the neat thing about require. So you just point to require, and you tell require what your main app script is. So let's actually go in my editor because it's better than cat. So here we go. Require.js. All right, so require.js loads itself, then bootstraps my app via main.js. In main.js, I declare some paths, which are like kind of like shortcuts for my app. So I can just say if I need to pull in jQuery, I can, as a dependency for instance down here, I just write jQuery. I don't have to point it to the actual path. So all these guys here are actually AMD compliant libraries at this point. So I can just pull them in, and they load dynamically. Not all JavaScript libraries are that way, as everybody no doubt knows. So we have a shim, so we can actually make use of old non-AMD compliant libraries. So pretty cool. This is a leaflet. All right, so this is all like basic config stuff for require.js. Let me just pull this guy in. And we get down to the actual app. So cool thing about require.js is that it goes in and loads all our dependencies, and then it sets us ready. So this is sort of like our document ready if you in typical JavaScript speak. So we know at this point that we have jQuery underscore backbone and my layout stuff. I've got a little if-then statement that says, hey, are we running Cordova, which is our... am I being too technical with anybody? Is this kind of following, like, generally speaking? Yeah, good. Okay, cool. So we're just doing a user agent detection to say, okay, I'm actually using Cordova here. Otherwise, I just run my normal web app. So we're using Backbone coupled up with Layout Manager, which allows us to basically just handle nested views in a clean way. In Backbone, like views are kind of like a controller as well as a view. So there's a lot of, because it's a web app, a lot of events are driven via the user interaction. So your view's gonna keep track of what's going on. So it's kind of like I'm short-circuiting the typical Backbone router in this case, because in a web app you don't really care about history. Okay, so I got my layout view, which is a class that I'm extending, the typical or the Backbone view. On initialization, we're declaring some subviews of this particular view. One is the menu, one is the map, and I guess I might as well show you all the coolness that Yeoman gives us in here. So Yeoman set up a scaffolding for me.
I'm sorry. It's important to note that Grunt, Grunt, CLI, Yo, and Bower were all installed via NPM, which is the Node Package Management System. So all you have to do if you have a modern Mac OS is to just call npm install -g grunt CLI Bower and Yo.
Yeah, there's a hard dependencies there. And there's tons of resources for doing that, like if you're looking to do it at home. So Yeoman set up a server for me, basically, that helps us figure out, do stuff like live reload, like Michael mentioned. And it also runs a little web server for us, too, so we don't have to actually keep track of an Apache virtual host and all that jazz. We can just fire it up whenever we want. This is my main view is all here. This is one of my subviews. This is another subview. This is the map subview. This is my menu subview. I've got some listeners bound to these guys that let you that trigger events up to the main view and then back down to the menu view. So I got Buffalo Billiards there, and everybody's ready for a drink, I'm sure. This place is closer. Although I think Buffalo Billiards is cooler. Might be worth the walk. Okay, let's get back to the code. So these are my two views here. There's my menu view, there's my map view. On initialize, I set up a listener on the menu view, which is when I click this guy. That's a listener that triggered down from the menu and calls this callback, which, thanks to our layout manager handiness, we can just call render and it'll dynamically update our view. Takes care of garbage collection, removes any previously bound listeners and all that jazz. So it's quite handy. Usually you have to, the typical Backbone app, you have to write all that stuff yourself. So they just kind of help you out there. Let's see, here we go. So yeah, so then when I get that event, I also trigger, so there's two things happening here. I render a detail view, which is where this guy comes in. And then I also trigger down to the map view, pass the model, which is these data points essentially. Triggers down, comes down and says, hey, fire this guy, and also add my point in and bring me to it. So that all works. We were talking about REST servers and all that. So like, how does this actually tie into a Drupal site? Okay, so your Drupal site is your backend that provides data to your app. And especially with a varnish cache in front of it, you can actually get good performance out of it as opposed to doing a full bootstrap. And Michael's got that. Michael can actually show us. So we're working on an app right now that is for the Austin Post, local community paper. And we're leveraging services and its views integration to serve up.
So inside of here, what we've done is we've created a view. So let's go to services first.
Yeah.
Services, views. Just leave it here. Services and views, right? So services is a module you can download from Drupal.org, right? If you come over here, you can see that we've created a resource that is the views resource. This views resource allows you to retrieve views, and it defines an endpoint. So how our app actually works here, let me just go grab that. Where's our collection? So here's our post collection. So a post collection is a collection of posts published by the newspaper, right? You can see here that this is the URL that it's going to actually query. That is the service endpoint from our Drupal installation. I should be able to open this section of the URL. And if you visit the URL, what you get is just JSON objects, right? These are no different than what you'd consume from any Google Places API or map services. It contains the information that's provided by the view. And the view is configured here. So you can see, we've created the view, or if you look at the path, you can kind of dissect the path here. We've created the service endpoint called APA for the Austin Post app, and the resource is called views. And the view name itself is APA post list. So if we come into views here, we can come up and take a look at the APA post list. And you'll see that this is just a standard Drupal view. You don't even need, the services one isn't actually even used in this case. We just created a page view that has a couple of different fields, nodes, titles, authors, any of the type of information that you'd normally leverage through the Drupal view system, any of your fieldable entities, all that kind of stuff can all be brought in via relationships. You can add dynamic filter criterias and sort criterias, as well as specify offsets. So what we do is we come over here, and you'll notice it. So if this guy, so let's say we're going to load a view of the first. This is the all. Let's show me all the posts, right? If we do offset of 1, well, you'll see this is this guy. If you do an offset of 1, what you'll see is that the 91 one comes first here. So an offset of 1 now triggers the 91. So you use this to control pagination inside of the app, right? So this information comes from the view and creates a JSON object. And then what we do is we consume that JSON object here in the collection when we instantiate the collections. You want to walk them through? walking through the dynamic live reload kind of stuff.
Sure. So some of the nice scaffolding that comes along with Yeoman, and Yeoman is just a scaffolder. Like it doesn't actually do stuff. Grunt is what handles a lot of the stuff that's going on. You just generally, like if you wanted to start out with a new web app, we would do. Let's see if there's already a test. So I'm going to scaffold out something real quick. I need to start a new web app. Just do yo web app. Set you up with a prompts. Guy says, hey, welcome. Would you like to include Twitter Bootstrap? Yes, I would. Would you like to require? Yes. Goes and uses Node to dynamically pull in all our modules that Grunt relies on, and pulls in Grunt as well.
These are local installations of Node modules that are installed to the Node modules folder. It goes and grabs a ton of them. This is what provides all the functionality for the web app. The live reload server, SAS compilation via Compass. Anytime it does file system notifications using iNotify, it sits and listens for changes to your SAS files or your SCSS files or your JavaScript. And anytime it detects a change, it triggers a live reload so that you don't have to actually go and clear, there's no Drupal clear cache for this type of development. It just works. The second you change a file is the second it populates across to the browser window automatically for you.
And so, and Grunt doesn't just magically work. It's easily configurable to do all this stuff. Yeoman is handy because it does a lot of this pre-configuration for you. So this is the Grunt file for the new web app I just generated. This is this is the Node server that runs. It listens on port 900, host name. You can come in here and change this to whatever you like. Here's our live reload task being passed options in for this guy. And you can register your own tasks. Say you wanted to do some JavaScript testing on your files. You could register, make use of the test that's already set up here or change it however you like.
So there's the build task right there, and that's kind of a good insight into how Grunt actually works. So the build task is a chain of 7 or 8 other tasks that include cleaning out the distribution so that the previous build is invalidated, preparing the minification, and loading up concurrent just lets you run grunt service or grunt tasks concurrently. Excuse me. Require.js is run to why does it actually run? I don't know what the require.js task actually does.
It actually uses require pulls in all the module dependencies.
Yes.
Creates a really super optimized file system.
Yeah, and then CSS minification goes through and does what we're used to seeing for aggregate CSS in Drupal world, or we call it preprocessed CSS. Concatenation of all of those minified files into one file. Uglify takes all your JavaScript and goes and turns it from the long variable names that you've used to create your stuff into the short ones that you'd see if you inspected a page like Google or Google Plus or something. That you'll notice that you can't parse any of their JavaScript. It's simplified. It's uglified down so for page size. Copy moves over just resources, and then the rest just involves minification. But this is the build task that you'd do if you were going to take this app and deploy it somewhere. Most of the time, so you can walk through the build task. This is it going through. It actually does image minification. And now if you take a look, if you want to show them the build directory, from what was normal, show them the CSS, I guess. All right. Just There you go. So the styles are now, if you look at styles or scripts, either one. They're all minified, and you can tell because it's got that unique token on the front side of it. But it's all pushed together, and it's all been uglified. You want to show them the live reload capability, so we can go back to here. So just like he was doing previously, you can run grunt server, and that sits here. It starts up half of the same tasks. It doesn't do all the minification and everything because normally when you're in here in the inspector mode, you want to come in and be able to inspect all your CSS and JavaScript and see where things are actually happening. So you leave it in full mode for that. And any changes that you make to it, if you want to go and just edit the CSS or the HTML, edit the HTML, index.html. could do you can just change the HTML if you want, and the index dot. Really?
It's a little temperamental sometimes.
Go refresh it and see if it. Or go try changing the HTML. Is it the same location? Yeah. So the live reload functionality.
Dodgy sometimes.
It is. You save it.
Oh, this is small. There we go. We're gonna change hello to hello. This is for Americans.
There you go. So saving it is working on HTML but not in Sass right now for some reason. So any changes that you make in here, adding new tags, doing whatever you want, live reload across to the back as soon as you save the file. It's nice for multi-desktop environments. You can kind of leave your app running on the left-hand side and change all your stuff as you go through it.
All right. Next.
So we've walked through scaffolding the app with Yo, building the app with Grunt, downloading the different. You want to go? Why don't you go grab using Bower one of the third-party libraries, like pull in Leaflet or something. So you can use Bower to search for third-party libraries. So Bower search Leaflet, I guess. And these are the various libraries that Bower was able to find. With Bower, so Bower install, the save command here says I want to save it to my Bower JSON object, right? So if he runs this, it'll download Leaflet it'll get check it out and put it in your local directory, and it'll add it directly to the Bower JSON object. This is nice for two reasons. Can you look at the gitignore file? The gitignore file specifically ignores Bower components, so you're not actually storing third-party code in your repositories. It creates a lot less churn, right? So all you're storing in your project is the reference to the Git repository for Leaflet and the version that you'd like to check out as a tag. It's kind of similar to how drushmake works for checking out Drupal modules the same way. You can do Drupal or drushmake this site, and it'll just go grab all the various modules at the right version numbers. So we've gone through Bower JSON. What's doing LS here? Editor configuration, Bower RC, the grunt file. So package JSON is another bit. If you're looking, if you find yourself creating a number of these web apps, you might find it convenient to add your own npm modules so that. What did we need? We needed something the other day that was.
We need our grunt. jQuery UI.
Oh yeah, a perfect example. So jQuery UI does not have an AMD compatible. jQuery UI is not AMD compatible, and a lot of the other libraries are. Like jQuery itself is AMD compatible. It's not, but you can grab a npm module called jQuery UI. You can do npm search or whatever. Yeah. So if you Bower install jQuery UI,
you can't use it
as an AMD module inside of your app because it's not defined correctly. Require.js isn't able to be used with it. But there's an npm package, jQuery UI-AMD, that you can install with npm install jQuery AMD that allows you to rewrite the jQuery UI library on the fly. And you just go ahead and you give jQuery UI AMD the path to your jQuery UI, and it rewrites it. This is a pain if you have to do it every time that you want to check this out as a developer or give it to a new developer to have them work on it. So you probably want to create in your grunt file a system that automatically initializes this when you download it. So you can do the Bower install and the jQuery UI AMD component here automatically when you download it and get it running. So that's a good way to. You might add to your package.json the jQuery UI AMD npm or node module exactly to do that kind of work. What else do we have here? You want to show them the app itself?
Yeah. You mean the awesome post?
Yeah.
All right, so we're finally going to show you the real app, in case you were wondering if that was going to happen.
So this is an example of an app that is implemented with the systems we just went through. It's called the News Neighbor app here. And if you take a look, so this guy is consuming the RESTful framework that we had, that I demonstrated to you over here at the view, right? And these are the stories that are coming across. It's leveraging Isotope, Masonry, and a couple of other libraries to provide the dynamic resizing and the effects for popping the content under itself. If you take a look here, you can look at all the different other neighborhoods in Austin, and it'll automatically reload the content from the different areas so you can kind of browse through it. This is a way to provide, using standard media queries and responsive techniques, we're able to provide a good user experience for phones, tablets, really any device that comes to it. And more importantly, if we wanted to deliver this as just a regular product on the website, we can do that too. We don't actually have to deploy it to a phone. It's not tied to that interface. You can come through here and you can see all this content is here just live. So it's really fast, nice and responsive. Most of the work on this guy is being done via the OpenGL libraries that are done for 3D web transformations. So if you can keep all of your transformations out of JavaScript and put them into CSS, you can let the web browsers optimize them for you, and it's a really good technique to keep the thing performant. A lot of times when people start to complain about performance in Backbone or in Cordova apps, it really kind of boils down to the fact that the people who were building it didn't realize what they could do to really speed up the rendering and the movement of the objects. And the same thing holds true on your websites. I mean, every website will be better off if you're using CSS animations and things that can throw it over to the GPU instead of putting it in JavaScript where it has to be done in the CPU for changing things like the number of columns or the size and everything. And it'll just reflow a lot quicker for you.
What are the libraries that you mentioned that you're using here again?
Okay, so the library that provides the layout, right, is called Masonry. Oh. Okay. It's what provides that little Pinterest style effect, right? Mm-hmm. As you begin to scroll here, though, what you'll find is that when you get close to the bottom, we run out of articles, right? And then you'll see how they start to flow back in. So this infinite scroll effect is provided by the insert operation that's given to us through a library called Isotope. So the Masonry is good for the layout technique, but you have to add Isotope on top of it so that you can dynamically and sort items too. And you'll see that there's a number of cool effects you can do with the Isotope system that we're not really leveraging here yet, but you can resort them, you can change the layout style and size, especially as you change different landscape properties or whatever. So there's some interesting stuff you can do there. I think that's about it. We got any questions about any of this stuff? I mean, we can open it up. We're a lot better developers.
How long did this take you?
The app, not long. I mean, honestly, I mean, I can walk you through setting up the services thing in 5 minutes. And but setting up the services thing takes an hour, and then implementing this part, a lot of it's done for you already. I mean, there's not a ton of code. If you look through the, especially, it really depends on how comfortable you are in JavaScript. Quit. So how this app, I'll walk through a little bit of this app for you, and you can see. This app is a series of collections for the hoods that are over here on the left-hand side. These guys are collections, right, that are pulled in from this URL, which is very similar to the one that pulls across the posts. And this is just a view that provides access to the fieldable entities that are taxonomy terms, right? There's no difference. It's all the same data as far as we're concerned. And so post collections, hood collections. We have favorite hood collections, which are actually backed by local storage. So we don't have to go to the web to get all this information. We can cache it locally. So if you're not available somewhere where there's internet access, you can use standard HTML5, local storage, and other techniques like SQLite and that kind of stuff to store the stuff and make it performant. The models are really simple. The post model, basically, everything comes across as a JSON object, and you can give some things some defaults. Let's see if there's anything here. Anything. The views get a little tricky, but other than that, it's not. The real tricky part is event negotiation across all the different parts of it. So, for instance, scrolling this list of posts has to trigger an event that is listened by its parent. So the event bubbles up and then has to be responded to by the footer that you see down here. So when I get to the top of the page, the footer comes back. And when I start to scroll down, the footer goes away. These are two completely unrelated things, and you have to kind of communicate between the two of them. So setting up the structure of the app is really what takes the most time. Everything else is just kind of filling in.
But had you used found these JavaScript libraries and used them before?
Mm-mm.
So part of your time was figuring out what do I need and what can I reuse. I mean, can typically take a lot of time if you don't have.
Well,
you have things that you've used before, and
maybe I misspoke. We've used almost all of these libraries before in different ways, but
Okay,
pulling them together for this was unique. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, no, we've used every one of these things before.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was really just about putting it all together. Any other questions?
So how did you find it originally, do you know?
Find which?
All the libraries?
That's a good question. We were just dealing with this. We were just dealing with the same problems of constantly trying to manage a development environment across multiple developers in a consistent way. We were getting tired of, mine's not working because I didn't grab this module, or we're at the wrong version here, or my development environment's separate and different from yours. And one of the nice things about the Node package management system is that all of those packages are actually, you have the option to install them globally, but all those packages are actually installed right here in Node modules. So if you look at Node modules, these are the actual JavaScript Node modules that are sitting here running for this particular site setup, which means that you can have different versions across different projects, so that if one project you have is older than another, it can use the good old version that it's always had. So you don't have to, say you get a client who calls you up with a problem, you don't have to downgrade your Grunt live reload server because it's causing a problem with the site that you built, a year and a half ago or whatever. So the actual modules live with the project, which is kind of a nice thing. It's kind of the same way Drupal works in that regard. If you had a perfect analogy is if you had Drupal on multi-site and you had everything in sites all modules and you had actual multi-sites running, everybody's familiar with the bear it is that, like, if you update your views module, you got to go, clear your caches, check all your updates, and make sure you didn't break anything, and make sure you don't have any missing handlers and all that kind of stuff. That can be a real pain, and this kind of helps alleviate a lot of that. So it's really just a build automation process that we found as a result of getting tired of chasing down the same problems again and again. It removes all the complexity from you as a developer. You just roll it up. I mean, and the files that it goes into are really simple. What's that? This is just, that's the kind of cool thing about this. So it's a Node server, right? So it can run from anywhere. I mean, you don't have to have Apache. There's no special server running on this machine, right?
I was just wondering, this is in the app, it's folder.
Oh yeah. So the structure of the app is your app folder holds your grunt file, your package, and so when you first get it, you check it out from Git. You just run npm install. And it goes and grabs everything that it's in package JSON, all the grunt stuff that you're going to need, and then Bower install, and then you're good to go.
What about the back end? You've got your Drupal site in the back end.
Yeah.
And I saw when it pops up the little photo add post, I'm sure that's connected into, you'll have it so it connects into the Drupal system so you can upload it.
Yeah, that's all provided via the services module here. You'll notice that it has the Node resource. And with the Node resource, you can enable create, update, delete, and index functionality. So with Node create, all you do is you post a put JSON object to a particular URL, and if your user has a session cookie that's been approved, right? And in other words, you have a valid Drupal session, then it just goes ahead and posts it up, right?
Restate the question.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, gotcha. He asked. I'm sorry. Yeah, fire away, Ben. Yeah, let's go ahead and walk through that. I'm sorry. Yeah, so here it is. Here it is on an iOS device, right? So if we look at it here, you can see. So here, hold on. These things are impossible. I'm sorry. From the final app is published to the Google Play Store or the Android or the Apple App Store.
So that's going to use Phonegap.
Exactly. So Phonegap.
To your web address that you know is Node.js.
Actually, it's all local. So what happens is that's a good question. He's asking. So the structure of this app is basically Phonegap sits below your entire web app, which could be written in Ember or Node or Backbone or whatever it is, whatever technology you've chosen to sit up here. And it doesn't have to be anything. It can just be some JavaScript in a page that shows you your GPS location or whatever, right? We just chose Backbone or Ember because they do a good job of creating that interactive experience that people expect to see in an app, and it does it all for you automatically. What this does, you create through your Xcode or your Android Studio. You go ahead and so I'll show you. Let me show you what this guy looks like. Command Q to get out of here. So exactly, yeah. So when we come in here, all you're looking at here is the. So when you run, so the perfect example is here. You've tested your app, and you don't have to test it in the actual.
But that index HTML is basically going to the server.
No.
It's wrapping like HTML.
It's wrapping. So that index HTML. Yeah, it's a perfect question. The index HTML here is the same index HTML that you see locally on my machine. Nothing is remote. Everything is local, right? The only thing it does remotely is request CRUD operations, right? And it's to get new information about posts and update those. All of the source documents are here locally. This is not. We're not pulling things down off of your website, and that's an important distinction for performance. There are technologies with Phonegap, like called child browser, that allow you to pull down from remote stores, but I've been down that path, and it just leads to a lot of performance issues. It's what's that? Yeah. The content that's in here is the stubbed out or templated content that's going to be delivered. It's going to be populated via a templating system with the stuff that comes down in the JSON objects from the services endpoint. So just like the title comes down from the services endpoint, it gets populated directly into the templates, which then get rendered out to the screen via the views and controls. The which, I'm sorry? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. So all that negotiation is handled inside of the app and allows you to, for things like users, right? Create, update, retrieve users, and authenticate those users. Get real authentication tokens. And for some things, these are the standard services endpoints. But you might have to write a custom service endpoint. But it's not complicated. All you do is you pass a JSON object back and forth. I mean, you just call to JSON and you're done. All right. So at the end of the day, basically you can distribute your app via the private Google stores for enterprise stuff. For instance, we're working on a new one coming up here that allows a commercial construction company to track its projects, and for the people in the fleet and on the job sites to respond to change requests by taking pictures with their phone, and it automatically updates and sends that picture up to the server. And the whole thing is Drupal on the backside for managing the project, which has change requests and orders, and you create a new updated work item that has the picture on it and everything. So everything's Drupal logic on the backside, which we're comfortable with. And on the front side, it's just a little bit of Backbone and some CRUD operations to populate those Drupal objects upstream. And then you can leverage all the cool Drupal image cache functionality and advanced media handling and all that kind of stuff downstream. So it really takes away a lot of the heavy lifting and leaves you to the interaction part. I mean, you have to write quite a bit of interaction code. And there are the Backbone solution is a really, really lightweight solution that's extremely performant, right? Ember gets a little bit closer to let me handle some of this stuff for you. And if you keep going down the way, you end up with somewhere like Sencha Touch or jQuery Mobile, which are a lot more heavy-handed and all kind of look the same. And even if you start theming it all kind of, everybody knows when you get a jQuery Mobile app on your phone, you know what I mean? So we find it provides a nice balance, just like Drupal kind of provides a nice balance between a product and a framework. You know, Symfony is a nice framework that we've now integrated in Drupal 8. But WordPress is a fully delivered product. And just like Drupal kind of sits in the middle of those two, in the middle of that continuum, so that you can change it to make it what you want. Backbone and Ember, to a certain degree, do the same thing.
Backbone also comes along with some just best practices for handling like object separation of concerns, for instance, so that like the subview handles its events and then bubbles up that to the relevant parent view in that case. Also like does garbage collection for like if you do a homebrew app or something where you just like throw it together yourself, you might run into certain like memory problems, you know.
Because when you remove these objects from the canvas, they don't automatically unbind themselves as listeners, right? So you have these little ghost listeners just hanging out around, and what these frameworks tend to do is make it so that you don't have to think about any of that kind of stuff. It just all happens for you automatically when you remove the view from the view that it's encapsulated inside of. No, I'm sorry. I mean the web canvas. So yeah, the web view is what these guys render into, right? And its performance varies on each version of of the iOS or Android that you go to. Any other questions? Yeah. Yeah. Let me show you the full API that's available here. The full API that is available is
And
well, you don't actually have to write them. Almost all the functionality. Sorry, let me find. There are a lot of
Yeah, you can
Phonegap
write
plugins
Cordova.
that are like that's what.
There's a Phonegap for iOS, there's a Phonegap for Android.
Actually, I'm sorry. The Phonegaps are all the same, right? What the only thing that differs amongst Phonegaps installations for the purposes of your app is the JavaScript file that binds to the installation itself. So everything else is the same. Nothing in your app changes from Apple to Android except for that one JavaScript file, and you have that. We have that dynamically detected in this stuff here. Where's the?
Where you've got all the actual
Under developer?
Ducks.
So you have full access via PhoneGap. You have full access to the accelerometer, the camera, the compass. You can create and manipulate contacts. You have information about the unique device, what type of device it is, its UUID, things that you can help identify the unique user upstream for all of your different authentication events. Geolocation is the use of GPS. The in-app browser is like a component child browser, I believe. And then storage is, of course, local storage, which allows you to use it as a backend data store.
And PhoneGap can help you stub out your actual projects. So when you actually download PhoneGap, it comes with a few binaries that you can actually use to execute and build. So you don't have to go and arrange the files. It just kind of handles that for you.
So if I go into downloads here,
And each one's different for each project. So if you're building an iOS,
right? So I downloaded the PhoneGap installation, and all I have to do is go into lib, right? And then pick, what do I want to make? Do I want to make an iOS app, right? And then you go into binary here, right? So now I'm in here. All I do is I run .create, and I say I want to make a, hold on, I have to remember the order of this guy's controller. Here you go. So the order is, the directory, what do you want to, what's the fully qualified domain of this app, which is just something, a unique way to identify it, and then what you want to call it. So let's put it, hold on, where is this? Let's put it right here. We'll just put it in test. Oh, do I? I don't think so. Oh, no, it exists.
Do you have a file or?
Let's see here. All right, so that did it. If I go into test 1, 2, 3, oops. Right. You'll see that this is the Xcode project, right? And if I just go into Xcode now, I can open this Xcode project. File.
You open the project file.
Yeah, I should be able to do file open, right? Appa Xcode. Let me just make sure I'm in the right place here. No, this is downloads, Phonegap, lib, iOS, bin. I made test 1, 2, 3. If I just open this guy up, this is the Apache Phonegap, and if we want to run it here, we can just run it in. Let's run it in iPhone 6. And this is Apache Phonegap. So we just created this guy. Hopefully, I can tell you something about the phone and the device that it's on. Oh, it doesn't say anything? Yeah, it says device is ready. There you go. So that was how you deploy an iOS one. The Android one is just as easy. Yeah, it gives you the, that's exactly right. It gives you the www, and what you normally do is you build that as part of your Grunt setup. So you have your Grunt task manager go and automatically replace that, or you use a symlink to do that. So our project structure normally involves iOS, Android, and a www directory that is symlinked from these two guys. And then we dynamically detect whether or not you're iOS or Android and give you the right JavaScript file inside of the app. So what's kind of cool is you can leverage, that's exactly right. You give it the right Cordova one.
There are some quirks between the
Yeah, they're really small differences, but they do actually matter. We found that out the hard way. It takes a while to chase that one down.
And development in Cordova is happening fast. I mean, they're like 2 weeks ago they were in 2.6, now they're 2.8. So
It's constantly updated. So everything in here, I mean, like I said, everything in www just gets replaced, and you're good to go. You can take this guy and package him up. You can manage all of your permissions and everything through the Android Studio, things like media acquiring, media capture, and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's really straightforward. You get to use, I mean, it's not, you don't have to, you don't write Objective-C. I mean, you can go look at it, and you can go, manipulate it, and you can go add some, there's a lot of Phonegap plugins that allow you to do some advanced functionality, especially on a per, Phonegap will never involve itself with specifically iOS stuff. It'll never reach down into specific categories, but people have, and there are modules that address just one or two of those things. I'm trying to think of really good examples. There aren't really any. I don't really use them because we tend to develop the web app component, and we want to be able to leverage it without that information, because we can actually detect your geolocation via the app over the Cordova or Phonegap JavaScript bindings. But if we don't have those, we can fall back to HTML5 geolocation, which is really powerful because it means that we can take the same application that we've developed for your app and deploy it right on the website. And all you have to do is give it permission when you come as a user to access your geolocation. And it really, the real benefit of all this is that it means that you don't have to develop 16 different apps anymore. You're not on the treadmill trying to keep them all feature comparison and feature complete, and you can just deploy it in one place. I've begun recommending it as a replacement for some responsive designs because they lend themselves so well. Because you have your user come to the site on a phone, serve them up the web app, right? And let them use HTML5 to get the geolocation or whatever, or media capture or whatever you need. Because media capture is capable on HTML5 too. I mean, there's very little that isn't possible via the regular web view. That just needs, honestly, Phonegap just provides the permissions support for you, so that, and a nice little app button because that's what people like,
Like, Cyclone do offline syncing, so like offline you add a picture, add a post, and then later you go back on.
So what Backbone does something even cooler than that. When you do a collection fetch from Backbone, what it does is it gets back every collection, just like every node has a unique node ID, and that's what uniquely identifies it in Drupal. Every collection has an NID of sorts. It's a unique identifier for that particular collection, for that particular model, right? So a collection is comprised of a lot of models. And when you do a collection fetch, right, just like we do on this page right here, it pulls down. Let's do a resize so it does it right. Okay. When you do a collection fetch, it pulls down a bunch of models in JSON, and it finds the unique identifier. And if it's a new unique identifier, it calls add on that collection, which is what actually triggers the event to add the view to the page here, right? If it finds one that it already has, it calls an event called change, which allows me to dynamically update. So let's say they change the picture for this guy. I can change the picture for that guy live when the collection is updated. And it doesn't have to be moved, and the view is just re-rendered right in place. So it's a lot more automated than all that. So there's also, it can also be removed as well. If you had for the truck, for the one that manages the fleet or whatever, if you have like people on job sites, you can always have it just pulling down a collection and then dynamically adding and removing people as they are working or not working on a particular task or something. There's a live view of what they're doing. I'm not making up excuses, but.
Yeah, and there's a Backbone plugin that'll let you do a local storage as well. So like, say you're always pulling down the same hoods. Like our hood list, for instance, is always the same. It's never really going to change. We just cache that once it's pulled down, and it stores in local storage.
And you can see the fetch here if you look at
Backbone. There's a Backbone plugin called Backbone Cache something. Yeah.
So if you take a look in here in scripts, the view, what view pulls that down? Is it main view?
Hoods?
No. Control E.
I think the
Hood list view. Do you have the? Yeah. So
yeah, there it is.
these two lines right here are. Excuse me. These two lines right here are all that's required to do local storage with the same. Everything's still the same. You still call fetch the same way, right? You just say I want to cache it, and I want to cache it for 60,000 seconds, right? These two right here, plus the addition, if you see up there on line -6 right here, this is the one that enables the fetch cache. So by turning this on, and I don't know if you're familiar with how require.js works, but this is defining the modules and then making them available. This is defining the module jQuery here, and then making it available inside of the function that you're about to call here, right? So it's available, jQuery is available as the $sign inside of this function is basically what's happening. And by calling a backbone fetch cache there at the top and passing it in, what we're really saying is I want backbone fetch cache to override the fetch method and allow you to add a couple different properties that give it new functionality. So this is called the decorator pattern. Instead of making you extend the object in a bunch of different ways, you can just add functionality to it. So you can do this. There's all kinds of different modules that you can add on to do different kinds of functionality. This is just the one that we chose for local storage. So this, you can see this here. This hood list view listens to the collection, and when you click add, what is this? The hood list view? Oh yeah, this allows you to store favorite neighborhoods. You can listen to specific views, and in this case we listen to the collection. And wait a second, what is this one? Let's listen to this collection. Oh, when a new collection is added, call add view. So when this guy populates originally, every time a new collection gets added to the collection, it just goes and populates a new view into the bottom. So if you do a refresh, this thing just keeps running.
And like when you scroll down, we add in new ones. So the collection, this view just keeps listening to the collection. We trigger a collection fetch to get new items, and this view, as that collection gets populated, this view will say, "Hey, I got new stuff. Let me render it," and it goes in and renders each one.
You don't have to do any of that work. You just listen to the collection, and it calls the add events.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have it?
Yeah, I think so. Somewhere in here.
I'm sorry? IRC?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Michael Favia. Yeah.
Our GitHub is called Favish Inc. I think.
Yeah.
And there's a repo in there called Drupal Camp Austin 2013 demo. That's my little places one. We don't have the Austin post app available there, but that's just it's basically the same principles.